I like when I get you to laugh out of shame, or like at the same time you are ashamed that you're laughing while laughing. It's really tickles me, Chris. It tickles me, Chris. It tickles my Chris with a weird leprechaun accent.
Tickle my Chris.
Yeah, it tickles me, Chris.
Tickles me, Chris.
Chris. Guys, that's really offensive.
It's not.
Video games, 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 video games.
We saw a personalized license plate on the way here.
Mm-hmm.
It was great.
Good story.
It was ROCST R.
Oh, it was just ROCST star symbol R, which is the worst license plate in the entire world.
ROCST R.
ROCST R.
Yeah, it's ROC, so it's ROCST R, which is just a sad stuttering person, which I assumed because they looked like a dork.
ROCST R.
Anyway, that's a good story.
You notice, I feel like with personalized license plates,
You're a douche.
no. But I feel like everybody who owns personalized license plates knows each other.
That really, I think, enhances my previous statement.
You know what I mean, though? Like, do you have a personalized license plate?
I do not.
Do you know anybody who does?
I don't think I do.
Right?
Yeah.
I think the inverse is also true.
That's probably the case.
Yeah, it's like, well, I have a little personalized license plate. Everybody I know does.
You've got to go to
ROCST R.
You got to go to a meeting. Yeah, it's like when people on the internet, like from internet communities who've known each other for like 10 years, meet for the first time, and it's like, oh, you're Darth Solo 42.
Oh, you're Tentacle Sex. Oh, yeah.
Classic. Like,
Oh, no, I'm ROCST R.
oh, man.
Oh, God, I saw you on the 405.
Miata.
That's when the guy walks up and says,
man.
I'm lawyer, and everyone goes,
Oh, my God. Lawyer pulls up in his, like, Lamborghini.
Right. Yeah, my old housemate lived next to someone, or his parents lived next to someone who had a license plate that just said lawyer, which was just like, it was just like 4 buildings
But
exploding.
see, it's one thing if you're a lawyer in, like, the state of Delaware.
He's
If
a lawyer
you're
in California.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
That is extreme.
Yeah.
He's been a lawyer since at least the 70s.
Yeah.
He was the first lawyer of California.
Did I ever talk about... Okay, this is jumping the gun here, but this is like a convoluted train of thought. But have you guys checked out Curiosity at all?
Yes.
The rover?
I'm sorry. Have you guys checked out Curiosity, What's Inside the Cube?
Oh, yeah, that I have seen. Sorry.
I'm also familiar with the Mars rover.
Yeah.
I walked by a programmer's desk at work who was playing Curiosity and was literally just pawing at a touchscreen like a robot. Just pawing.
All right, let's start the podcast, and then we'll get
okay.
back to this. Let's just...
I had one other point to make about the
No, we can
personalized license
continue that. We can continue that conversation directly.
Oh.
Let's just tag this.
It's November 15th, 2012, and video games.
This is Idle Thumbs 83. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
And I'm Sean Vanneman.
All right, so what were you going to say about license plates?
Oh, I just imagine how many times do you think the guy who works at like the personalized license plate, like at the DMV, the guy who has to read all the things, rolls his eyes in a day, like constantly, right?
That's just his job.
That's just a professional eye roller. Oh God,
all
you're
right.
great. ROCST R. Good. Nice.
Do you think they pre-screen those, or do you think he just gets all of them where he's just like, shit,
No, they do.
no,
And I was
tits,
reading a thing about-
no. I mean, like the pre-screening guy, like, is this the same guy that is approving? Like,
Yeah.
do you think you can even get him past the counter? Like, do you submit them online?
Or if there's like a robot
Yeah,
that
he's just got
goes
this-
like, oh, that has a dick in it.
Yeah,
No,
Well, hopefully that community when they
Butts.
meet up, the guy who gets through like the incredibly convoluted sex term, like conveyed in a way that doesn't get taken down by the censors. Hopefully that guy just gets high-fived everywhere
Yeah.
by the rest of the room at their like annual convention or whatever meetup this is that we're describing. Yeah.
Anyway, that was all I had. That was the only thing I had to say.
Is that
Yeah.
so? Anyway,
ROCST R.
ROCST R. Curiosity. Have you guys played that? What's inside the cube?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
I was trying to figure out what was inside the cube. I had to touch a lot of smaller cubes to receive coins.
I want to know what's inside the game because I can't get in because of the servers.
Oh, there's a cube that you touch, and then parts of the cube disappear.
Yeah.
That's about all that's in there.
That's all. That is the extent of the
you get
gameplay
coins
experience
for
that
something.
I've seen, at least.
I've heard that this requires a team of 5 to be working 36-hour sprints for a week or two at all times to make happen. Did you see that stuff?
I did. The video where they walk around the office.
Well, that and Peter Molyneux was posting tweets that were like, "Team pulled another 36-hour thing.
Oh my God.
Just working hard, great. They're just champs." And everyone was like, "This is like a company of 5 people on your passion project, and you got like you're posting."
This is how insane video game development. This is how fucked up video game development. It's like finally done with this 300-person team working on the new Fable game. AAA, getting out of AAA development, just going to do the most simple, just little app for a phone, just click boxes. That's, really just trying to strip it down and I really just want to take the stress out of game development. Like, flash forward 6 months. Oh my God. Like, just
Steve has been home in 4 weeks.
like, what is it about video games that just makes anything just the life ruiner? Like,
What's inside the cube? Your soul.
Like, any scope, apparently, any team size, any concept, including click on cube, is just like, well, time to buckle down and get this done, guys. Really just...
They made the mistake of making a cube that hundreds of thousands of people have to click on at the same time, which apparently is not the simplest cube to design.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a legitimately difficult engineering problem, but it still is ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
Also, the reason I brought it up in after the
Personalized license plate talk.
because the main thing that I think of when I see Curiosity, there were a couple of guys.
The Mars rover.
At work, the guys who make the Double Fine documentary, the 2-Player Productions guys, the day or the day after it came out, they were just playing it constantly. They were just on it all day, like tapping around, and it made me think just watching them just do that, just because they weren't. I don't think they were trying to like draw things in it or anything. Like I've seen a bunch of screenshots of interesting patterns and shapes and stuff people have made and messages. But I think like most people, they were just tapping, just tapping. And it reminded me of, I don't remember if this is a thing I've talked about on the podcast before, but when I was in high school, there was this game, I think it was a Flash game called the Kill Everyone Project. Have I brought this up on the cast?
No.
Maybe I have, and it was like...
This is going to be
Sounds like a video game someone plays in
This is going to be a hilarious games played, by the way.
It was literally just a button that you click. And every time you click it, it like decreases the world population by 1, like in the counter at the top of the thing. But like many people are doing this simultaneously,
right?
So it's going down by a lot, and it tracks like how many clicks you personally are doing like per minute, and how many the overall rate is. And it starts from it started at the smallest country in the world, started at the Vatican, and then went all the way in like to China, and went in order. So like you work through each of these countries' population sequentially, and it took many months, and possibly like years, possibly multiple years.
You did it.
Well, the community did it, but like the reason I bring it up,
we all did it.
The reason I bring it up is because even though there was nothing to this, like all it was clicking a thing. And the funniest thing about it is people would game it, and like they had to eventually find ways to like block software people would use to automatically click faster, and the developers actually did have to keep up with this and make sure it wasn't being exploited, which is hysterical.
There was an arms race to prevent abuse, to prevent
this
automated
was so
genocide.
Unsophisticated compared to kind of the modern cow clicker version of this. There were no rewards, there were no achievements, there were no microtransactions. Like it wasn't a profit seeking exercise on the part of the guy who made it or whoever made it. It was literally just a goofy thing on a website, but there was a chat room in it. And the crazy thing about this is that the people who were in here all the time clicking this stupid button, like we all got to know each other really well just because we were all in the same little chat room clicking this button constantly. And so everybody knew each other by their just username. I think mine was just Remo. I usually just go by that or just my name on the internet. And it was just, and like there were unofficial community sites for this thing, and one guy at one point sent me like burned CDs when that was still a thing of like the Who and stuff, because it came out in the chat that we were both into some of the same bands, and like it was this weird thing. And I remember at one point I kind of just stopped doing it because it got boring after a while. And but this was after like months of being just there, clicking this thing and like being in the chat room. And I came back like several months later, and it was like, "Hey, Remo, like I haven't seen you here for ages," and like it was this
Still killing.
still killing everybody. And like it really was that very specific internet thing of like knowing people really well, but only in a certain very limited specific range, and only
Well,
by
you have one thing in common, which is genocide, which is interesting.
But like the funny thing about it is that that was totally incidental, right? Like it wasn't like everybody in here is like into Nine Inch Nails and like goth shit or whatever. I don't even know, right? Like there wasn't any tonal.
Take that,
There, I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Like Nazis.
There was no like tonal.
There was no cultural through thread.
Yeah.
Other than you
It was
guys
totally-
were
Someone
on
said,
the
"Oh, this
internet.
is a funny webpage."
Yeah.
The internet
And
in the
the
90s.
website had all kinds of other just goofy flash things on it. Like there were other games, and there were like experiments, like just little color cycle things that the guy made, like just all kinds of just flash stuff from a guy who liked to make weird flash things. And this was just one of them. I think this was the one that actually made his site very highly trafficked because for some reason it kind of caught on. But I remember having that moment of coming back like 6 months later, just on a lark, and having that, like experiencing that moment of recognition of everybody being like, "Hey, what up?" And it just so happened that like that 1 week there were a bunch of kind of old timers from TCAP, which is what people call it, like showed up within the span of a few days, and it was like, "Oh man, it's like the old home week back here. Like Remo's back. Like this other guy. Like I don't remember anyone else's name, but like just all this stuff." And I hadn't thought about this in years. And when I was going through some of my stuff several months ago, I found like the burned CDs that guy had made me. And like, I never did this, but I know that some of the people there actually met in person. Like they had little like very small meetups and stuff. It was a weird thing, and it was all predicated on essentially nothing. It was just that weird internet
At
phenomenon.
that meetup, you can't be like, "So how many times did you click the button?" Like that was not part of the conversation.
And that's not even what people talked about in the chat on the site. I don't know. It was just crazy. And
Were there any like sort of like, at least when you hit a marquee moment when they're like, "Oh, we just wiped out the whole country,"
no,
people are
absolutely.
like, "Wow."
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
When you got to like nearing the end of like, a decently sized country, like Austria or something, right? Like one that isn't just like a tiny little principality or island or something. Like there definitely were people went crazy, and like there was always a traffic surge at that point, and like the rate would increase a lot. And but for the most part, it was just nothing. And like by the time it got to China, I mean, the funny thing about it is that China ended up being like a huge percentage of the overall time spent, just because China's population is so enormous, and just being like 40%, India as well. Being like 40% through China was just like nothing. I mean, there might as well have been nothing happening, even though there were tons of people clicking. The game in those moments, the game became almost entirely irrelevant to discussion because there were just the milestone was so far away. And I think that was the point at which I left. So I never ended up actually. I wasn't there like for the moment or even the weeks leading up to the completion. I remember going back at one point and seeing it complete and being like, "Oh, huh, funny thing." And it was this weird moment of like,
guess those guys did it.
yeah, like I guess they're not here anymore.
One day you'll look to the sky and you'll see a flash and you'll know that we accomplished our mission.
Yeah.
One day you'll wake up and everyone's dead. They were all clicked on by a dude in a chat.
Anyway, this is like it's kind of a ridiculous story because it's a massive waste of time on my part.
It's a tremendous waste of time.
Those types of internet communities were ones that I was totally. That was a big actual just part of what I was into in like the late 90s, early 2000s. Like that's kind of where Idle Thumbs came from. Actually, is groups like that.
Yeah,
and that's totally not related to anything that I ever do at this point. And
I
always wonder if that sort of thing exists.
In
still.
fact,
I think so.
But it does.
It absolutely does. But I know what you mean. Like
much cleaner ways.
My ability to like maintain any kind of continuity in that kind of community at this point is just zero. It's non-existent. Like I can't. It's really hard for me to maintain unless it's one that I'm actually affiliated with, right? Like Idle Thumbs or like the Double Fine forum, stuff like that. But like anything outside of my what is directly relevant to my life, it's really hard for me to. But at that point, the thread required was apparently so incredibly minimal as to be almost non-existent. Like just goofy flash thing where you click a button. It's funny just how different my like
it's weird.
Yeah, center of gravity is on the internet now, I guess. Or probably just as a person, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, even like we went to PAX this year and I met all the people who moderate the Telltale Games forum, which is all just community members, and they're all like great friends who all hang out in the moderator forum and who clearly all also just talk on Steam and IM and just basically just know each other as friends at this point. And I was like, oh God, I'm an admin on this forum and I only know like 3 of you guys. I've never spoken to you in person. It was really weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, internet communities are crazy. They're crazy things.
I think they're really cool.
No, it's cool.
But they're super weird.
It's definitely a new social construct. I mean, it piggybacks directly on the back of existing social contracts, interactions that have existed for millennia, obviously, but like the way in which they're formed and like the sort of temporal space that they exist in is totally bizarre.
And aspects of it that can come out simply because of of things that have never existed. You know, there are things like, you know, like pen pals and things like that have always existed, and like there are aspects of that. It's fascinating.
It is.
So what is inside the cube?
I don't know. It'll change your life, though.
I bet nobody knows.
Oh, and anyway, the thing that was funny to me about comparing that and this is that even though the actual thing you're doing is so similar, the context for it is so different, and there's none of that kind of like interaction that occurs in Curiosity, and it also exists like as a for-profit thing where you can buy a $50,000 pickaxe or whatever the hell you can do in that game.
Yeah, it is definitely demarcates the difference between old internet community and old internet social and new internet social. Like the idea of just find a thing someone might find interesting and you can bolt a fucking chat room or IRC client onto it and a community will just grow around it. But I feel like that there's no trust that people will do that at this point.
Right. In fact, just the other day, God, this is so weird. I was reading, Greg Brown linked the Wikipedia page, or no, actually linked the website of milliondollarhomepage.com, if you guys remember that. There's some kid from the UK sold advertising on his website for $1 per pixel in 1,000 by 1,000 pixel space that you could buy advertising in for $1 per pixel. And, like, it was this huge phenomenon in like 2005. Anyway, that guy now works on this site calm.com, and I went there, and if you go there, it's just a full screen image of like a pastoral field with a voice being like, "Welcome to calm.com, a place on the internet where you can do nothing and be calm." And it just whatever. And it sucks because the only thing I could think of when I saw it is like, how are they making money off this? Like, what's the business plan here? Like, what's the thing that's going to monetize my brain or whatever? Like, it just sucks that now I can't look at anything on the internet without immediately assuming
what's the monetization strategy for Zombo?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's basically Zombocom. But I have to assume
less soothing, weirdly.
I have to assume somebody, yeah, it is actually less soothing. But I have to assume somebody has a plan to make dollars off of it somehow.
Speaking of making dollars and things on the internet, you all know that you can get a goatse email address now, right?
You can sign up to be on a list for one anyway.
That's true. So that's important.
It's weird that these sign up for goatse. Like if you just straight up go to goatse.cx now, it's now just a thing to like sign up for a service. It's like the most innocuous, banal.
I like
of all the metaphors for how the internet has been tamed.
That's exactly it is the actual internet equivalent of a tourist trap now, where it's like
exactly, yeah.
Back in my day, there was a picture of a guy pulling his fucking ass apart and showing you prolapsed butthole. Now.
Good morning.
Now get your novelty email address.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
and keychain.
It's like down. Oh God.
Goatse keychain?
Yeah.
Well, it's just the keychain just has engraved your email address at goatse.cx. The image is not involved.
It as a tourist trap is hilarious to me.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh God, sorry. Also, goatse is a tourist trap is hilarious.
Podcast is over.
All right, so this has been a weird podcast.
This is the episode where we just talk about the internet.
Oh,
what? Are you going to talk about a game? Ooh, I wanted to talk about a thing, but you probably wanted. It's the thing you guys were playing.
Oh, I was going to talk about. Yeah, I was going to seg from.
Kill everyone reminds me of real
Exactly. I
life.
was going to say needless and pointless death. Oh, Real Lives 2012 or
Oh my
2010.
God, 2010, yeah.
Yeah,
What a game.
that game is awesome.
Yeah.
This game is really good. This game actually, we in the forums pointed it out and then expounded on what we were talking about even more. But we pointed out just sort of we were talking about the Oregon Trail recently. When was that?
This is a month ago.
About
A month ago. And this game sort of tickled the same
Yeah.
pleasure
Oh, yeah,
zone
definitely,
as the Oregon Trail, which is not like a very that's a pretty hefty
It's not a well
statement.
tickled zone.
It's a rarely tickled zone.
Well, the funny thing to me about this game versus the Oregon Trail is that, I mean, this game is it feels like a definitely less sophisticated design than Oregon Trail.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
like,
yeah.
Real Lives 2010, both in execution and in what's going on under the hood, is incredibly simplistic, like
Right.
to the point of feeling almost like half complete in some ways.
It's kind of just a series of dice rolls with narrative
Exactly.
content, right?
Yeah. I
Exactly,
mean, as
yeah.
far as I can tell, it's pretty much what's going on.
It's informed dice rolls.
They
Though.
take,
they take stats.
statistics from various countries and social groups and throughout the world. And as you start playing a character at age 0, and then it's just year by year, things happen, presumably based on their relative frequency to
Right.
such a person born in such a place. And like, that's about it. And you can choose to do things like you can say, I want to find a different job, or I want to ask for a raise, or I want to move to a different city, or I want to emigrate to a different country, or I want to try to get married, try to have a child. There's all kinds of things you can do pretty much at any time, at least once you've reached the age where those things become appropriate. But just those things being exposed, even without a lot of artifice, is really incredible.
Well, yeah, the simplicity of that seems kind of like part of its strength. It's not trying to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Even just when things start becoming available, like my character was when I played Chandra, was a girl born in India, and just when you start, all of the options on your action screen are grayed out. All those things I just listed, you can't do any of them. But as a girl living in India at age 7, Get a Job became available.
I know.
And it was just like, oh my God. And in my second year of school, I was removed from school. And then like at any point when these things come up, you can press more info and it gives you like the associated statistic that explains why this is the case. And it's like, fewer than 50%. Like the female literacy rate in India is like
Right.
it's low, and the percentage of girls who finish school is low, and relative to the developed world, or the Western world, I suppose. And it's just, I don't know. There's something just about just being confronted with these things that's sort of terrifying in a way. I won't go through my character's entire life. She actually had a long life. I mean, she lived to her mid late 70s.
Wow.
Which I thought that's a pretty full life, and actually kept the same job for almost her entire life. And I every single year I asked for a raise, and it paid off because I ended up getting one about every 3 years, which is not great, but felt not the worst in the context of this game. And the funny thing is, I was fired from my job as a seamstress, which I'd had since I was about 15 years old until I was like 70. And then at age 70, I started a job as a fortune teller, which kind of cracked me up. And what's funny with the fortune teller thing? I applied to that job like 8 times before I got it because it was the highest paying job.
Applied to what?
Yeah, I know.
It doesn't feel like a
But
job
it was
you
the
apply
highest
for.
paying job for a 70-year-old woman in India with my skills and like education level, which were low. And I applied to it like 8 times, and I finally got it, and I was so excited. I don't know, it was weird. But
Died 2 short years later.
the single most affecting moment I had in this game, and it really, it's a shadow obviously of the actual like magnitude of this event that someone might have in the real world. So I don't want to, I just want to make that clear now that I'm aware of that.
So you're saying real lives is not real life?
Yeah, but I still want to just point it out because it was the moment that kind of like, I don't know, it hung over the entire game for me. When I was, my family did pretty well when I was growing up relative to other Indian families. We were doing pretty well, but then there started just being all kinds of problems. Like I had siblings who would die in childbirth or like who would die when they were young. Like it got really atrocious. And then when I was 7, my older sister, like a message just popped up and said, your sister has been raped. And like that was the entire message. It's like, oh my God. Like it was just
I'm 7.
yeah, it was unbelievable. And then when I got to when I was like age 20, I was in a relationship with some guy. And then it was like, you have been raped. It's like, oh my God, Jesus. And then I was dumped by this guy. And then I had a child that I tried to give up but was unsuccessful. And then had this child. And like by the time I had the child, I was in a relationship with another guy. And like it was just the most complicated, like just in my brain, I was trying to like puzzle through it. And it was just this like within 3 years, it's just, everything was just like went insane for my character. And I'm just like, this is horrible. Like this is just such a like psychologically destructive. And my character fell into clinical depression. It was just really insane. And I remember like a year after that, I had this child, right, that was born out of this terrible situation, and I was in this relationship with this guy, and I proposed marriage to this guy, or like, and he accepted. And I have to say, like the moment where the game was like, he has accepted, like you're getting married, was one of the most like relieving moments. Like it was a crazy feeling.
It actually sheds a light on who that guy is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm like,
in such a wonderful
God,
way.
Thank the fucking world. Like, holy Christ. I was so relieved. Like it's
had he said no, your depression just would have plummeted.
I know. But it was amazing. Like just the fact that this game made me, even with as unsophisticated as this game is, like from a systems point of view, like the fact that that these things resulted in that like system of events, and then just the overwhelming sense of relief I had when it was like some element of stability in this character's life has been acquired thanks to this guy agreeing to like raise this child with me and like be a partner with me for life. And like we stayed married for 50 plus years, like 55 years until he died, like at the age
until you killed him
when he was like 80 or something, which again pretty full life. But like and past that point, her life was actually relatively devoid of major tragedies, right? There were ups and downs like any life, but like it was really past that age of like 2021, the really just completely atrocious stuff for the most part ended. Like there was, a flood that ended up costing us like a huge chunk of our savings and like things like that, but they felt very weatherable compared to this just deluge of just grief in the early stages of adulthood. I don't know. It was amazing. It was really incredible. It was a crazy thing. I'm really glad I played through that game.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And you were in India.
Yes.
Good. My character was in Florianópolis in Brazil, which is actually a place where I knew a guy from, which is weird. And I've always heard that it's absolutely beautiful. It's like just absolutely stunningly beautiful on the coast of Brazil, south of Sao Paulo. And I was born into total squalor. And then after 1 year of being 1 year of life, year one, my mother got a great job, and we went from squalor with meager food to like luxurious food. We had one telephone at the beginning, and then by my second year of life, we had 2 phones, 2 TVs, and a car. And it was like awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was like, this game's easy.
Your life took a turn. Yeah. This is like your DayZ experience.
Yeah, it was exactly like my DayZ experience. I got a bike. Yeah. And my brothers were older than me, and I was Samoa, I think was his name. And they went to school. They got into a lot of relationships and got broken up with a lot, which I thought was funny. My dad became depressed, but then recovered from depression. He was depressed before I was born. All of our health was great. My brother was in a car accident, but he was fine. My dad got his master's.
Wow.
Yeah. Coming up aces. My 12th birthday, I think it's called, let me look it up. I have it right here. Hold on. It's called Chagas disease. which is a parasite you get from being bit by a bug. And Charles Darwin died of it. And
Should have evolved a little bit more, Darwin. Sorry, go ahead.
take that, Darwin. And I looked at I was sitting there looking at the stat screen. I'm looking at how good, like fantastic home, luxurious food level, where my parents are socking money away.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
everything. I'm like, I'm going to college. I'm already thinking about
one
all
real
these
quick
things.
thing. Sorry, in her older age, Chandra, my character, got really into like playing the stock market, and I actually made quite a lot of money. I mean, by my life's previous standards, by investing in like jewelry and high risk bonds and stuff, it was pretty good. And I was able to, in the later stages of my life, actually start donating a lot to charity, which felt really good. Sorry, go ahead.
So I get this disease, and I read about it in the Learn More section, which is great. Like that is the amount of information that they give to you is fantastic. So I'm like, okay, this feels completely livable. I was dead in 2 years.
Oh,
Yeah. That was it. 14. Died of this parasite. My family was thriving. So that was the game for me.
oh,
And
All the money in the world
I
couldn't
was
cure
playing
you.
it, and I was like, this game is easy. Everything's coming up Samoa. Horrible. Dead in 2 years, yeah. So
Real
good
life.
though, I guess. Well, also because like there would be these floods, and there was a lot of famine. So it'd be like there's a famine has hit the country. 60,000 people are dead. 60,000 people are dead.
Jesus.
It affects 11 million people. Your family is fine. Happened 3 times. Well, I was like 7, 9, and 10.
right.
And I was
So you
just-
weathered all these like incredible.
right. So we have this really nice upper class life, for as far as I can tell. And I have a younger sister and 2 older brothers. Right after I got sick, I asked a girl to be my girlfriend, and she said no. And that was sort of the first bad thing that happened to me. And I was like, that's
But
just
it's like the lowest impact bad thing.
right. And I was like, that's just an aberration. It'll be fine. Look, because in my head, I'd already woven the narrative that I was going to get over this disease.
Right.
I was just going to triumph, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously.
That's what your family does.
Right. And then in my like late teens, I was going to like put way more time into like sports and physical stuff because I was kind of in reading and music and art. And I was like, oh, I'll put it into physical stuff. I'll get into sports after my 13th birthday.
Yeah.
And that'll like give me some like physical fortitude going into my life. Had it all
Oh
figured
man.
out.
Speaking of that, by the way, going back to like when you die, you get an obituary. I assume you got that as well.
Oh, I got a 14-year-old's obituary. It
Yeah.
ruined my fucking day.
Mine was really interesting because it was so understated. You know, it was just like I can't.
It's very simple. It's like so and so died at the age of whatever. They did this. They did this. They
right,
did this.
and it was just like
mine was 3
she
lines.
Mine was like very. It was like she wasn't known very well in the community, and like she wasn't a very visible person. But she studied music her entire life, and like she always tried to give to charity. And it was so like nice. I don't know. It was just really.
So you feel like you won the game?
I feel like I did really well, honestly. Yeah, I feel like I came out of just like one of the most unimaginably bad situations, and like really made the best of
My next playthrough.
another half century of living.
I'm definitely going to play again. I might play before we leave, depending on when we're done here. But I want to just make the most reckless decisions possible and see what happens. Like quit school as soon as I can. Like do anything I can.
Yeah.
And just see. I feel like if I do that, maybe everything will come up. Everything will work out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good game.
Yeah.
It is.
And it has a free trial download. Just type in Real Lives 2010.
Yeah, you get three lives for free.
It looks like a questionable edutainment site that you get it from, but just download it. You'll be fine. It's great. I'm going to pay for it. It's really good.
Since we're just backfilling games we talked about last week for a second, have you guys all played Frog Fractions at this point?
played
completed.
Frog.
Did you complete Frog Fractions?
No, I got to the point where it wanted me to start giving back powers.
Oh man, so you didn't.
So you never unlocked the secret of Frog Fractions.
There's a secret.
Oh my god, we still can't. Oh,
We have to just go.
Yeah.
Yeah, you must.
can't do this
you
2 weeks
must.
in a
I'm
row.
not. I'm not going back.
So you got to the point where you upgraded your lily pad to a turtle to a dragon,
yes,
but you didn't use It then said you can use WASD to move around, right?
I did that.
You didn't ever move down. At which point the dragon swims down into the lake.
Oh my god! What?
And then it unlocks an entire fucking crazy like multi-game genre adventure where the frog goes to like the bug planet Mars and like flies around in a spaceship with a text adventure and shit. It's crazy.
Fuck you guys. What? That's in that game?
It's like
You know what? I actually do blame you completely because Frog Fractions felt like one of those bullshit things that you guys would make me play for a minute, and then it would just be like, okay,
what things? What are these things?
I don't
that
know,
make you play?
like video games.
Thanks to you guys, now I have to do this stupid weekly thing where I talk about video
I
games.
just thought I got to the point where I got the laser tongue and like I was just eating bugs and crazy like
Yeah, I've
9 to the E 14th power came out.
Probably about 25% of the posts I've seen about Frog Fractions by people who are recommended Frog Fractions are like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like, you add and remove the laser like 100 times. Haha, very funny, Frog Fractions. And that's...
That encapsulates my opinion, yes.
Yeah, right, exactly. So when you go underwater with the dragon, then like you get like infinite coins, and then you come back up and you can,
infinite coins, Chris?
Yeah, you go to the bottom of the lake and there's just money down there.
Yeah, no, like actually infinite. Like the number, it just changes from a number to like
all
lots
coins.
or something. Yeah, and then you go up into space, and then it's like a space shooter, like a Galaxian style thing or whatever, where you're shooting with a laser, and then you reach the bug Mars.
Oh, then you have to get Mars citizenship.
Yeah, and then you're put on trial, and you
It's
take
important to
a
point out.
bug citizenship exam.
It's important to point out that this game, for the first, what seems to be forever of it, is just you moving left to right. Like, what is those, like, sort of that old game, that old, like, Shipped with Windows, where, like, guys in parachutes are coming down and you shot them?
Yeah, sure. Or it's like Missile Command, basically.
Yeah. It's just Missile
basically
Command,
Missile
except
Command.
you're a frog with a really long tongue.
Yeah. And then you go to Bug Mars, you become a bug citizen.
Then this happens. A
and
bug
then-
citizen?
A citizen of
Yeah,
Bug
you become
Mars.
naturalized.
You get a little like identification card that you sign with your mouse, like your cursor.
Oh, I wrote bugs.
God, what happens next? I mean, it just goes on and on.
Yeah, there's all sorts of weird shit
Like
where you
every
end up,
time you
I think
like,
it becomes DLC for Dragon Age.
it's just the number of game genres that end up being represented is just out of control. Like you always, every time another one comes up, it's still surprised. There's a text adventure, as Jake said. Like there's a weird just maze thing with just narration, just an actual voice, just talking about the history of boxing, like this fictional history of boxing. Like there's,
I don't even want to give away all of them because
yeah, I know it's true. Yeah,
there's some good secret ones that
So you're
just show
saying
up.
there's more to Frog Fractions.
yeah. In fact, the only thing that the main thing that's disappointing to me about Frog Fractions is that the game that it purports to be at the beginning isn't a more credible edutainment game.
I know. You're not actually eating bugs to make fractions, which was really disappointing to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I wish
If it had started off as actual edutainment, but then just fell
Yeah.
into this surreal hole.
because it makes it clear right from the beginning that there's a lot of winky stuff going on. Like
Yeah.
just the fact
Instantly.
that nobody could ever play this game and actually expect to learn about fractions. Like, if it made
That's
a
actually
little
what put
bit
me off of it.
yeah,
I went like, oh, great, hilarious.
Because I feel like if the
I
game,
thought that was the joke.
yeah, but and
Yeah.
that would be lame, a really lame. That's like almost like Tim and Eric style, just like
Exactly. That's
you know.
exactly what I thought it was. It was just like,
It still has a little bit of that sensibility to it.
No,
but
it
then
totally does. But
It has
it's
a
just,
lot of.
it has enough novelty to make up for it.
Yeah.
But like the version of that is represented just by the Frog Fractions portion
Yep.
is really
God, although when it
lame.
changes from fraction to scientific notation, I was very confused. And then when you're passing the citizenship exam, one of the dialogue options, when someone asks you about fractions, and one of the four things you can say is, "Well, actually, I've been a little more into scientific notation lately," and that totally cracked me up for some reason
Yeah,
because the
no,
game
that's
just
good.
silently changed at one
Yeah,
point,
yeah.
and apparently it was just because the frog's preference for fractions waned moments into frog fractions.
yeah.
It's a weird game.
So Frog Fractions is cool. It doesn't really have anything to say. Like it's for a game that's that high concept. It's kind of just a big gag, but it's a pretty well executed gag.
Yeah, it's worth playing through just because of the heap. It just keeps going and going and going and going in a way that is good.
Frog Fractions.
That courtroom scene is really reminiscent of The Visit, though.
Yeah, it is.
It's
It
exactly
is.
the same, basically. of
Yeah.
just, why are you playing
I mean,
this?
the funny thing about Frog Fractions and The Visit is I feel like they're actually very they try to do similar things, right? Like they take a very ostensibly straightforward, simple type of game and then just really just play with all your expectations about it. And I think The Visit is more successful in that. Like Frog Fractions is more outrageous and more surprising and like more voluminous, but The Visit, and not that these games need to be compared, but they reminded me of each other so much that I just have to praise The Visit, praise Myas and like his game The Visit for being a really elegant version of that, like really succinct and clever. So yeah, play The Visit if you haven't. There's a new version of it, I think, since we
it's on
talked about it
Newgrounds.
first.
Did you guys ever play any of the Cliff Johnson puzzle games? Like, did you play 3 and 3 or The Fool's Errand or
I
any
don't
of
think
those?
so.
Okay.
What is their? When did they exist?
They started off as Mac shareware games.
This is a hilarious episode of Idle.
I know.
A decent subset of our listenership is
Sorry,
going to be
this is so weird.
displeased with what is going on.
Well, I was
today.
going to talk about that because Frog Fractions and its sort of weird, like every screen is a new paradigm and is a new sort of weird thing you have to deal with. Is kind of this guy's shtick, and he made all these Mac shareware games that were sort of puzzly adventure games that also sometimes had weird sort of spatial traversal and weird other things like that inside of them. But the most known one was a game called The Fool's Errand, and the sequel to that has been in development for like 10 years, and it just came out within the last month. So if you're a person who likes puzzle games and also maybe wants it's worth looking at that stuff. I don't really have enough to say about it because I haven't played them in a million years. But the aesthetic of Frog Fractions weirdly reminded me of that guy's games from the 90s, but they're legitimate, actual sort of like slightly surreal puzzle narrative combinations that actually have really, really, really strong like logic puzzle and sort of just, I don't know. They reminded me, or Frog Fractions reminded me of that in a crazy way. And then I went to that guy's site and then saw that he actually has released the game for the first time since I was a kid.
Crazy.
So, yeah. The Fool's Errand is good. Anyway, games.
Sweet.
Frog Fractions.
This is a weird episode.
It is a very weird episode. Let me ground it a little bit more in something someone might have actually played. I've been playing a bunch more Mark of the Ninja. Yeah,
I know. I see you on Steam.
Yeah.
I see you there.
And it's been my enjoyment of it has been increasing as I've gotten deeper into the game.
Okay.
And it's interesting. Like one of the things I talked about a couple weeks ago about it was, especially in comparison to Dishonored, which they're both kind of prominent stealth games that have come out recently, or games with stealth in them, but they're very different in a lot of other ways. And like the way in which they're different is how precise Mark of the Ninja is, right? And like how crisp everything is, from the art direction to just the feeling of everything being very delineated, and like specifically, all the relationships are right there on the screen for you to see.
Right.
Every time in every level, when you look at your map and your objectives and stuff, there's 3 kind of optional goals you can pursue, or like optional conditions you can satisfy over the course of completing the levels, which might be things like kill 5 guards, or like don't get seen by any guards throughout the whole level, or like sabotage this thing without setting off the alarm, or whatever. I mean, there's all different things, and they're different for every level. And I felt like for the first several levels of the game, those goals and also all the like unlockable abilities and styles you get were all very much geared to killing guards. And as someone who was playing in a way where I tried to never kill any guards, and not only that, but pretty much never get seen, it felt like the game was really weighted very heavily against my playstyle, which bothered me because the notion of like the kind of fictional wrapper of the game seemed like it should really support my style, which is just super stealthy, like always in the shadows. And it's been cool because as I've been getting further into the game, I feel like there's finally more of these are starting to be actually achievable with the restrictions I set for myself.
Right.
And there's actually, like, I'm starting to unlock styles that are more about stealth. Because so many of the unlockable abilities for like the first several hours of the game are just all about like kill a guy, like string up a guy into a chandelier, like kill a guy when coming out from a thing. Like they're just all about killing guys. And I'm finally getting to this point where I have a style that allows me to have 2 distraction items and then not even have a sword. And like a lot of the goals end up being weird things like get smelled by all the dogs in this level, which was what I really enjoyed.
That's an awesome weird meta goal. Anyway.
It is good. It's a good goal.
Also, that has Nels all over it.
You'll get to the next level and just smell every dog in the level.
Your smell radius is much smaller than the dog's, so it's dangerous. Like I think I recently completed a level for the first time in which I actually achieved all 3 of those side goals, which I think was the first time I'd done that because it was the first time it was actually possible.
It was like
to
3
do.
nonviolent.
Yeah,
They weren't
subgoals,
mutually
yeah.
exclusive sort of things, where it's
well, they weren't things that none of them were things that required killing a dude. At this point, the only guys I've killed so far have been like a couple bosses that you have to kill, which, whatever. And it's, I don't know, like I feel like as I'm getting into the game, that space has been opening up more, and I kind of wish that more of that stuff had been supported. I mean, the game totally supports my playstyle, which is great. But this is one of those games where all of that precision that I was talking about makes me much more receptive to kind of arbitrary, achievement-y things. Like, I'm more receptive to that stuff, kind of the more gamey a game feels, right? Like, the more fuzzily a game kind of melts into its own fiction, the less I kind of enjoy
but there's this sort of almost like arcadey presentation to this.
Yeah. And I feel like it's a game that's totally perfect for like setting yourself those challenges, right? And giving you these very specific goals. And I think that stuff is great in a game like this. And I think it was a cool design decision to not just shunt that stuff away into achievements, but actually put them right on your goal screen as these things that are like on a per level basis. And I think that was great. I just wish that they had been more equitably kind of dispersed, like and it's been really fun getting into the part of the game. I don't know how far I am. I've been playing for about 6 hours, I guess. And I don't know. That's all I guess I've pretty much said what I was going to say. I'm getting into the point of the game where it feels like it's really a lot more achievable there's just more there.
That seems like that must have been a deliberate choice on their part. Because, I know that making the game that they're making, they must have known that there are people who'd want a non-lethal playthrough.
Yeah.
But it feels like they weighted early game more in favor of probably the larger audience group, which is the people who are just like, I want to be a sick ninja.
Yeah. Whereas
they know that the Chris Remos of the world will continue to non-lethal their way through until they can hold 2 non-lethal items and get smelled by dogs.
Right.
Well, also the combat stuff is things that they know as a studio that they're really goddamn good at. Mm-hmm. Just having made Shank 1 and Shank 2, they knew like, okay, we can have a bunch of sick
we can do sweet chaining animations together and stuff like that. Yeah. And I'm sure that stuff is awesome. And it's always interesting playing a game and Dishonored is the same way for me. Dishonored and Mark of the Ninja both feel like this to me, where I know there is just a huge amount of content I'm not seeing, right? Like a huge number of just animations I will never see in this game, and just a huge number of abilities I will never choose, and
that's
a
how
lot
I feel
of
about
systems
Dishonored.
that will never. And it's just weird, right? Especially as someone who I'm working on a game, The Cave, where our game is an extreme version of that, where depending on what characters you pick, you won't see like
parts
a
of the
third
game,
of the game,
Yeah.
And so it's interesting playing other games that are a different version of that, right? Like you'll see all the levels, but you won't see a lot of really significant content that is characters that is intrinsic to your character across all the levels.
Yeah.
But I also think it's cool when a game supports that.
I think that's
same
great.
with you guys. Like you guys have all this branching stuff in your game.
Yeah.
That a lot of people will just never see a lot of stuff in your game. I think that's really
right. Well, actually, I kind of. It's tough, like especially when you're talking with like really stringent production folks who are like, how many people are going to see that?
Right.
When you get into that conversation, and it occurred to me that the stuff that you're not seeing is actually adding value to your playthrough. Mm-hmm. Like every time you're not seeing something but are aware there's something you're not seeing, you're having the possibility space of what you could be seeing becomes broader, and you're enjoying the game more.
Yeah. That is a huge thing that's undervalued in all games, even linear games and linear experiences. Like, it's a goofy childhood example that I've used many times, but when you're riding Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland, there's this one bit where the stupid track forks literally, and one of the ways is probably just to the service tunnel where the boats go.
I know what you're talking about.
But as a little kid, that blew my mind. Just being on the stupid fucking boat and it going and going off to the right, and then being like, what is over there? What is to the left?
Yeah.
And just this huge.
Yep.
But the micro version of that is you making a weird choice in Mark of the Ninja, like what route you're going to take, and then you miss out on that encounter, but your brain still kind of like watercolor fills in a little bit of what could have been. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. The feeling that there is potential there that you're not taking in favor of something else is actually cool.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I think it's really good. And we always that's like a mantra. Like we have to pay for the thing you're not seeing so people believe that it's there. And that's,
But it's...
Well, also, I think when people become accustomed to the fact, when people internalize the fact that in this game that they're playing, they know there's a bunch of stuff they're not seeing. Not only do you kind of imagine what that thing could have been, I think it also just gives more resonance to the thing that you are.
The thing that you are doing, right? Yeah, of course.
Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
So yeah, Mark
do you have-
Ninja.
do you have-
That's actually become the main game that I've played in the last week.
Do you have any desire to go back through that
Steam
game
too.
and wreck shop?
Kind of, and it's same with Dishonored, right? Like I kind of think that would be interesting, but it's hard for me to imagine actually doing.
I'm in a really weird place with Dishonored where I'm trying to sneak around and then I just fuck it up and I get shot at and stabbed. So I just turn on everybody and then I make a mess and just I stand sometimes I die and sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's been really tough for me because I really like that game a lot. And I've talked about my conflict with that game extensively on the cast, but I'm now at the stage
does
where
that
I just
specific situation make you like it more or less?
not more, I guess, because I just don't know how I feel about it. Like I get to a point where I fuck up so bad that I just stab everybody in an area, and I'm standing there going, "Oh, this isn't what I wanted to do."
Yeah,
it's like, look what you've made me do.
So you've got the alcoholic guy basically, right? Where you're like, "I'm not going to take another drink. I'm not going to take."
And then
oh god, and then you just have the just drunken rampage.
I'm so bad at stealth games that's just I'm just poor at them. So that is my experience all the time, which is why I find first and 3D third person stealth really, really challenging because I'm always like, okay, I've watched these guys. I know what they're going to do. Like I spend a fuck ton of time just behind cover observing, like equipping the things that I'm going to use. And then I always end up doing some stupid bullshit thing where I halfway step out from behind the wall or like I hit a clipped volume and my guy doesn't duck behind the fucking face when he's supposed to. And then I'm just okay, I'm not going to quick load this now that I've been seen, but I also can't shake the 6 guys that just saw me. Yeah. So just fucking murder them all and throw them into the lake and move on to the next thing unsatisfied. Like that's my experience always.
So do you guys think it might be better if you just start out with the expectation of like, I'm not going to try and like murder everyone
just
all the time, but like I'm going to, if I have to kill a guy, I'll kill a guy.
Yeah, with Dishonored, that's how I walked into it. I was like, put it on a moderate difficulty level, just doing it. Because with Deus Ex 3, I didn't get very far into the game because I was like, okay, I'm stoked for this game. Setting it on hard, killing as few guys as I possibly can. Yeah. Oh my god, this game is so hard. I'm so bad at this. Like I got to the first hub, and that was like probably really only like 2 or 3 hours of play for me, but it felt like a fucking
awesome.
It felt like a lifetime. I know. One day I'll get back to when I'm retired.
Yeah. I just mean like walking around. It's not even a dangerous place because I just mean it's like getting to that first hub is a big moment in that game. I thought anyway.
The one thing that I think Dishonored needs to get credit for, though, is the fact that mostly when I fuck up, it's because of me and not because there are things like weird clip planes or like I can't duck behind. Like the game is just so cleanly made and all the edges are just perfectly sanded off.
Also, having lean is really beneficial in that way because lean is safe.
Yeah.
Lean doesn't feel safe, though.
I know. That's my problem.
I know it doesn't.
That's my problem with stealth games.
I wish lean was made to feel safe because that not knowing when I'm in cover and even like I feel like I can't help it in Dishonored, but I feel like when I lean 45 degrees out from a wall and the camera just goes boop, I'm like, I can just see that in third person. I can just see that from a security camera.
Though, right? Like I think it should feel nerve-wracking, even if in your brain you know that you're
the problem is it crosses a line of plausibility for me a lot of times in the stealth,
it is pretty implausible.
Which is hard for me to. That's actually why I think I need to get into Mark of the Ninja for a lot of the sort of. It's just sort of crisp. It's like you're either in the shadows or you're not. And I think that's much more my style because there's this sort of fungible area of plausibility in Dishonored that I can't get my brain around. So I'm like, I'm standing on top of this car. Can they see me?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just leaning out behind a dumpster 4 feet away from a guy, looking at him in the face, and I was fine. But now I'm standing on top of this, but I'm getting shot at.
It's just different logical leaps, though, right? Because
for sure, no. I'm just saying, it's hard for me to
straight up see through a door. Like you can see guys like 2 rooms away.
Right, no.
Profile, right? Like they're both. Totally
I'm not saying that the logical leaps are different. I think the visual information in Mark of the Ninja is more crisp. Is more
absolutely is.
I
just think it's not a plausibility thing. It's just
but the problem is because there's a lack of crispness in the rules of Dishonored that the first thing I go to as opposed to a list of rules that I've built for myself is human plausibility. I just go to that list and I go, if I was up here,
Dishonored is but it's the same for me with most sort of slightly fuzzy first-person immersive stealthy things.
Same here. It's
very hard for me to internalize the rules of that world in a way that I can reconcile, like intellectually and emotionally and input-output wise, and it makes me just feel like I'm bad at games. So maybe I am.
Yeah. It would be
Sorry, everyone.
It'd be funny. I'd be really interested to see because games like Dishonored are much more so than a more typical first-person game, first-person shooter or something, are really like little differences in playstyle can have huge output in terms of difference of actual game experience.
Sure.
And it would be interesting to see like how long is a typical level playthrough, like for you guys versus me or whatever, because the way I play is ridiculous. Like it's absurd. I would have to assume relatively few people play that game like I do because it would just be impractical. Like
It takes me like 2 hours a level.
Oh, that's the key. Okay, that's what I was going to say. It takes me hours to finish a level.
But I die a lot too.
Because I will just sit there. I will literally sit behind, to the point of irrationality, right? Like I'll sit behind a thing, like poking my head out for like 5 full walk cycles of these guys, right? To go around their patrol routes and like intersect each other. I will just sit there for so long just watching the screen. And it's funny to me because I just don't, there are so few video game experiences where that's acceptable to me.
Right.
But it totally is in a game like Dishonored.
That makes sense.
Like it's very bizarre. But before I do anything, I will have thought of just every possible thing that go wrong. And I don't think people should. I think the game would be a failure if people had to play it that way. And I don't think they do. But it is weird for me to think about how of that very specific, and Deus Ex 3 same way, or just Deus Ex anything. Just that one specific genre of game will just put me into like a meditative state when I'm playing. And the funny thing is that sometimes when I'm in that, it will actually backfire on me. Like I was on a roof one time and I was just standing there for so long, and I'll get so comfortable in this mode that I will just stand up from the computer and like go get a drink or something, just without even pausing the game, because I'm so fully in this state of just my character just purely observing. And then,
is there ever like a guy who just walks up behind you?
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Like occasionally, because I'll think I've actually, and that's what's funny about this, right? Is that I'll be looking.
You get
at
these sort of like hubristic moments.
Basically. Yeah, I'm like, I'm looking at all the guys on the ground, and I'm like, I've seen all these guys go through their walk loops like half a dozen times. I know every path of all the AIs here in this level, or at least in the like chunk of the level that I'm in right now. But what I haven't seen is the guy doing the incredibly huge like perimeter patrol or whatever on the roof or wherever he is.
Right.
That doesn't,
the guy on like the 8-minute loop cycle or something. Yeah.
Right. Who then? Hey, there's that guy. I'm like, oh my god! And then all of that time I've spent, that full like 10 minutes I've spent up there is then 100%.
Right, because everyone on the ground just goes.
Yeah. And what was funny to me that moment when that happened, I then was like, oh god! But because I was on the roof, it was actually fairly easy for me to get out of all of their lines of sight. So I just ran across like 4 buildings and just stood there for like 5 more minutes behind a thing until all the like heat, cooled down, and then I could go back to the exact same place I was before. But I was like one parapet over. Like I was like adjusted my thing and just sat there again for like 10 more minutes until I was ready to like run across the thing to like a window. And I don't know. This was one particular level that was one of my favorite experiences I've had in the game so far, because I felt like it was so well designed with this open courtyard and then multiple points of egress and ingress into the buildings on different floors, and like patrols on little balconies, and like I can't remember what it was called, but it was, I mean, there are there's spaces in that game that are just incredible to me from just a level design standpoint. And maybe that's it. Maybe those are the times when I'm willing to. Maybe that's what makes a game able for me to just sit there and just observe everything forever. If I feel like the space has so much going on just inherently that it feels like worthwhile to do that. Whereas you'd never do that in like sort of a prescribed corridor shooter or something. Like it'd be pointless. You wouldn't get anything out of it. Yeah. Even in a stealth one, right? Like even in like a certain Splinter Cell games or something, which some of which are more linear than others, like, past a certain point, it's highly diminishing returns. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Cool games.
You guys want to take a break?
Yeah, let's take a break.
Okay. Cool game.
What a weird episode.
Yeah, strange.
That's not bad.
Not good.
It's fine. Deal with it.
Maybe I'll play through Dishonored as just psychopath mode. Like I should start using grenades and shit.
Yeah, that's what I did. Actually, it's funny because you mentioned you asked me. Take a break. You asked me would I play through Mark of the Ninja or Dishonored or again as just Jake. You asked me, but as Crazy Guy. I actually did do that with Deus Ex 3. I played through a second time where I just killed everybody. I killed absolutely everyone I
it
could
fun?
find. Yeah, it was, but it felt like a novelty. You know, it felt like almost like a gag.
Right, like it's like you see the first like very finely and meticulously measured film, and then you see the Saturday Night Live sketch. The guy kicks down the door with like 3 bazookas.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And so it was weird. It was definitely kind of like the greatest hits album where I'm just like, I just want more of this. Like, I don't even care. Like, I don't care how subtle and interesting and like well put together it is. Whatever. I'm just gonna play this game again. Which I almost never do. I almost never play a game a second time.
Does Mark of the Ninja have a menu for being able to jump back to specific missions, or do you have to?
Yes, it actually confuses the hell out of me because if you, when you press play game, it jumps you in that menu to the latest checkpoint you're on. But if you press left and then right, you don't end up in the place you were the first time. Yeah, I don't understand how it scrolls through those missions, but it is confusing as hell. I once, about a week ago when I loaded up this game, I spent about 15 minutes of like loading and quitting the game in just complete confusion trying to figure out where I was before. It was very weird.
That sucks.
So now I never press left or right ever. Like I press game and I continue and I just press play wherever it is and I don't ever think about the mission name or anything because I don't trust myself to like be able to read.
I was asking
it's very odd.
because then if there was a particular encounter that looked like it might be fun to play through murdering people, you could actually jump back to it and just play that
I'll
one.
wait till I'm done with the game.
You play that one board.
Before I start experimenting.
I hear they're called boards.
They're called boards.
God, it used to drive me crazy when I was a kid. You know what game I first heard someone refer to a level as a board? Did you ever play Glider on Mac?
Yeah.
I played
Mac Shareware episode.
Yeah, I played so much Glider as a kid. It was this game where you have a paper airplane that it starts in like a corner of a room, usually up high, and you push it off, and then at that point you just lose altitude at a fixed rate, and you can go left or right with this little paper airplane, and you have to get it through like candles that'll light you on fire, or like you can't hit the ground.
But like heat vents will boost you back up.
Heat vents will boost you up, yeah, and fans will blow you really far. And it was a really clever, I guess you'd call it a platformer. I don't know what you call this game. The weird verticality and just like increasing downward motion made it feel like no other side perspective game.
Glider's really cool.
It was really awesome, and it had a level editor where you could make your own levels.
Your own boards.
Awesome, your own boards. Yeah, and I had a friend who called the levels boards, and I'd never heard anyone refer to a level as a board before, and it just drove me bonkers for some reason because it just was outside of my known vocabulary.
Sean and I, for some reason, are under the impression that boards is an East Coast word. Is that true?
Yeah, we're talking to Sean Ainsworth about
that. A friend of ours said that a lot of his friends called them boards, and I think
that's funny because at the point at which this was the case, this was when I just moved from the East Coast, and I'd never heard boards, and it drove me crazy. But maybe it is.
Well, there is that noted game designer, Board Lord.
He's he from New York or something?
Yeah. He's
good.
Board Lord.
Oh God. This is a weird
Glider, man. I should download Glider. I'm sure you can. I'm sure there's an emulator for like old Mac.
I think
games.
the Glider actually got ported to PC at some point.
Oh man.
Glider is, I think, like a tiny version, like a minuscule version of the Tetris story where one guy made it and it was distributed on Mac floppy disks forever, and then someone else was like, that Glider's big business.
Yeah.
So I think Glider is just owned by some random holding company at this point.
Glider is one of those games that is one of my kind of secret foundational games. Not secret because I deliberately don't ever mention it, but just because I always forget. Like, it's always overshadowed in my brain by things like SimCity and Civ 1 and stuff like that, which were the games that I always think of as like my really early foundational exposure to video games. But Glider, I probably played just as much as SimCity. I don't think about it as often because it doesn't connect to like a thread that keeps. There aren't more games I played after that and like other things that I played that kind of tie into Glider. But holy crap, I played that game a lot.
That is why, and I will not talk about this anymore on this episode, but early 90s Mac Shareware is super interesting because it is this weird branch of gaming that just has stopped. Mm-hmm. And very little of it ever sort of like got picked up and extended out or like merged sort of back into the trunk of the gaming lexicon. Mm-hmm. It's weird.
Yeah.
Glider is awesome, though.
Yeah. God, that game was so good.
You guys want to take a break?
Yeah, sorry. We'll take a break for real now. Sorry about that, Sean. Wait, hold on. Video game.
guys ever play the original 2D Duke Nukem?
Yes, it's pretty good.
That's fucking good.
That's PC shareware. That's Apogee. Yep. Oh, please. Did you ever play Dark Castle?
Yes.
We gotta stop talking about this shit.
Video game. And we're back.
We're back. Jake,
Oh, hey guys.
guess what?
Gonna wrap up with some
Totally
real mail.
back.
Oh, fuck.
Language.
I mean,
All right.
poo.
All right. Peter Smith says, "Hello, everyone. Why don't console games allow you to fully or more robustly rebind the controls? I'm gradually losing function in my hands, and some buttons are harder for me to press. I know that it's ridiculous. What?
That's horrible. That's sorry. That's just like just casually dropping. I'm gradually like losing my. That's really terrible. I'm sorry. God.
He says, I know that it's ridiculous to expect a company to tailor their games around my edge case, but rebindable controls seem like they would benefit everybody. Peter from Virginia. Yeah, I 100% agree with them. I wish that were... It's odd to me that never became just an expected thing in console. And you'd think it'd be easier than it would be on PC.
The thing is, it's one of those... I really think it has to do with just how bullshit game development is. I really think it is just one of those things that gets on a list somewhere and somebody bills 4 hours against it or like 12
totally.
hours against it because of
No, absolutely. I'm just
programming
saying, if
in
you're
UI
making a
and then
PC
it
game,
goes away.
It's one of those things that you can't just shunt off, right? Like if
Right.
you're making a PC game, most PC games anyway, anything where the control, like where fluidity of control is important, it's going to be in there, period. And it's just one of those things that in console development, it could have become one of those, and it just never did.
I mean, as somebody who like we're making a console game first, and we don't do that, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah,
and especially
I mean, I
in
think
this
it's less of
instance
a big deal in a game
this
like
reader.
well, I guess you have QTEs, so that is that there are.
And I only guffawed because I was so surprised by that being the turn in that email. It was just not something I was expecting. So I'm sorry about.
There's something that I mean, yeah, I definitely agree with this guy 100%. I mean. Obviously, for people like me, it's just a matter of convenience. But for a lot of people, it's actually it would be a significant improvement to their experience if they could rebind controls. Yeah, like very significant.
There's nothing like TCR related to any of that stuff, is there?
I'm sure there's weird set
probably
requirements,
is,
but
actually.
the reason that I'm sure that it's easier on the PC is that mouse 1, 2, 3, and every key on your keyboard are simple binary on-off digital inputs.
Yeah.
Whereas with a console, you have face buttons,
that's totally what it is.
which are digital in some cases, and on some systems they're analog. You have triggers, which are analog.
I think they're all digital now.
PS3 doesn't do the analog face buttons like it did on PS2,
so. I think
but
only
like
PS2 did that.
the different, the two sticks, the triggers, the bumpers, and face buttons. I'm sure that with some games, people just feel like it's an overwhelming prospect to allow you to rebind between those different
And
inputs.
also because you would only be able to rebind the face buttons,
Right.
You can rebind the face buttons and
The bumpers.
analog stick clicks and bumpers.
I think you could. I think just rebinding like for like, I think would still be a big step up, right?
Yeah.
Just rebind face buttons to other face buttons. Switch which analog stick does what thing. Like, I mean, every controller has 2 analog sticks now. Like, switch which triggers do. I mean, because some people can just use the right hand, and even if all they could do is just change which trigger did the thing or which shoulder button did the thing, that for some people that would be a big improvement.
It brings up a lot of just I agree. Ideally, I think that would be fantastic, but just you can represent almost all of those things using the same visual surface area in your UI on a PC, whereas on a console, an A button, an RT, an RB, an LS, an RS
I was just going to say
are very different shapes. So people end up building these really sort of bespoke on-screen UIs.
I think
and
if this were more expected, I think a standard way of representing that stuff would probably shake out pretty quickly.
There is a standard way of representing it, but
the
it's
thing is
deliberately
there's also no
using the
standard
shape
way
of the
of
button to explain, because already game consoles have the problem of players don't fucking know L1 from R or L1 from L2 on PlayStation 3 until you've just had it beat into you. But like people use the shape of those elements in UI to try and
It's one of those problems that could definitely be figured out if somebody sat down and figured it out, and people just don't get the time to do it.
Well, there's another alternative which the Halo games have always done, which is just at least offering you a few schemes.
Yes,
right. The schemes is good. There's like Southpaw and classic and
Also, there's one thing I want to say that's a little bit tangential to this, but it's a really awesome thing about working at Double Fine. Our game, Double Fine and Happy Action Theater, and our upcoming game Connect Party, which is a sequel, so it's quite similar. Those are Connect games that are they're very deliberately all ages. Like there's no competitive element, there's no score. Like they're just a bunch of hilarious, awesome activities where you just goof around in front of the Kinect, and amazing things happen on the screen. Like the guys who make those games are wizards at Double Fine with the Kinect. And a really fascinating thing that was not an intentional goal of those games, but has emerged as a really strong use case for Happy Action Theater and Kinect Party is schools that are specifically oriented towards kids with special needs and kids with disabilities. Happy Action Theater is used in a lot of these schools because it is so forgiving in the sense of it doesn't really matter if you don't have this one specific kind of fine motor control or whatever.
Right.
Like the game will respond. The
game's one feature requirement is be alive.
Yeah, and have some degree of movement available
Right.
to you, and it's really awesome to get to see videos of these kids just having a ball with this game and have teachers write and to say how much the games are helpful in terms of communicating various motor control skills to these kids. It's amazing. It's an amazing thing. They're just probably some of the most accessible
That's awesome.
games that exist. And
They're gonna love Kinect Party.
I know they really are.
So good.
Kinect Party is so. I think it's such a big step up already from Happy Action Theater.
This is the game we played.
Double
Jake
Fine
and I played.
employee
them, yeah.
thinks sequel to Double Fine game is good, but
I will say that is the
whatever.
game that
It's
Jake and
just
I played
awesome.
the most hours of at PAX. We just stood at your booth when you weren't even there. We're like, is Chris here? No. Okay, we'll be over here.
In the dubstep room. Whatever. Yeah.
It's I don't know that games generally have such a specific demographic target, or at least the kind of games we talk about. It's awesome being in a company where that is a common use case for games that we made. I don't know, it's rad. So that's not
Yeah.
what,
But yeah, no,
what
I
the
think-
guy's question
I
was.
mean,
but-
yeah,
You
I
summed
hope
it up the best though, Sean, when you said it is a problem that could be solvable, but it's frustratingly not one that anyone actually cares to do.
And also, everything in games is man, so much of games is there's no standard way of doing anything at any developer ever.
Right.
There's no share
true.
it's not
it's very frustrating.
if you're a camera loader in Hollywood, you know how to do that on every film ever. In the game industry, there's nothing even comparable to that. Maybe 2D art.
Well, in this very specific case, there are standards. There's exact imagery you're supposed to use for every
They're
button on every controller.
representational standards, but zero sort of backend standards.
Implementation.
Sure,
Yeah.
but the representational standards are also built in a way that they're not remotely swappable.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
There's even within the forced language, there's no common base.
yeah, it sucks.
All right. Adam Connolly writes, "Evening, chaps. I feel one of the most evocative simulated systems in the Sims series is that of man's primal curiosity of fire. Do you think many other games succeed, knowingly or not, to provide mechanical devices rather than story elements that portray traits not only of the characters but of society or mankind in a grander scheme? Cheers, Adam." Real Lives 2010. That game's. It's all very just overt. Just text saying this happens. I don't know if that's what the guy means exactly, but
You know
it
what's a
all
good example
emerges
on a board?
out of
Yeah.
just percentages and simple systems, but systems nonetheless.
I feel like board games do a lot of that stuff.
Board
really
games,
well.
I think, do this stuff well.
Yeah, we always talked about that when we were playing Imperial 2030 about how just because countries, especially near Saudi Arabia, became these sort of traversal crossroads for trying to get anything done in the region. Just
They became-
gnarly shit would
They
break
became
out.
important axis of control.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you just wanted to have a very secluded, outside of conflict playthrough, you just go over, you grab Brazil, you grab North America, and you sit
that's
back.
What's so funny about that is that
Yeah.
it really
Yeah, the people who are just tromping through the Middle East all over the place.
It is. It's just this crossroads of
Europe
fuckdom.
and the Middle East end up being just this war zone, which is so funny when you
Yeah.
actually. That's how the world was for centuries.
Yeah, it's really, and you kind of get to a place.
it still is
and the fun thing about playing the
in a lot of
game
cases.
is that you start having conversations about is this just our historical bias as players, or are there things inherent to the geography of these places?
Well, I think there's- I mean-
that gets into some really deep
I think
people
it's-
have those academic arguments today, and there's
Well,
some
the fact that
that's
the
some
United
inflection
States-
point of large arguments. I think.
I think a lot of it. It's a combination of both, right? Because you look at the United States. If North America as a continent had remained a collection of various colonies by a bunch of different world powers, it would have looked a lot different, right?
Right.
But the fact that it all from coast to coast was centralized under one federal government meant that until the 20th century, the United States was not. Obviously, the United States was involved in conflicts during until prior to the 20th century, obviously, but it was not subject to the same just ongoing churn
Right. Yeah, it's very different.
that you saw, in Europe and the Middle East, and like that was a lot of that was just geographical, and a lot of it was sort of political, but or rather the geographical fallout of like political evolution, right?
Yeah.
But given that situation, it makes perfect sense. And when you start playing that board game, I don't think you're bound by those things, right? Like people play board games in wacky ways. It's like, yeah, I'm going to be Brazil and conquer the world. Like that's not like necessarily analogous to anything, but you still end up with a lot of very similar situations.
Just and to get the question back to video games, I think games that actually play with light and dark, like actually the where light is being a mechanic, some of that stuff I think is pretty cool when it gets to sort of humans' desire to not be in the dark and how this scary things that are in the dark are. Amnesia is a great example, and especially that is the core mechanic of the game. Actually, I think like the early Silent Hill games when you're just sort of walking through these fogs and there's all this like sort of the unknown behind the fog.
Silent Hill is a really good
example.
example.
I feel like that gets to this like that's less of the system. That's sort of like creating AV with which it can be deemed a loose system. I think that creates a feeling inside of you, a behavior and feeling inside of you as the player, as opposed to a system that's then being re-represented by an NPC or essentially, or as whatever you would call a sim. They're not an NPC, but the actual human being in the game The Sims.
Yeah, it's a sim.
Aren't they called Sims?
They're called Sims?
Yeah,
okay.
called Sims.
Okay.
So
it's a little different, but
I think stuff like day-night cycles in games like Far Cry 2 really, like the dawn, like a dawning day, like daybreak in that game inspires like awe and wonder in me. And like
I just start setting shit on fire as soon as the sun comes up.
I mean, that's, again, I don't know how much that strays from like the core of this guy's question, but definitely it evokes in me very, very similar reactions to, if you're not in the middle of combat or something, obviously, which just gets into like craziness, but like there's a lot of moments in games like that where if the system is built in such a way that you actually have played a lot of it in just regular daylight or complete darkness, whatever, like being in those dusk or dawn midpoints really does, I think, evoke a lot of the feelings you get in those situations.
Yeah, totally. Which is what I like about games. Like frog fractions. What's it like to ride a dragon?
All right.
Do you want to call it at 2 and then do
we got one more that we can answer in a word. So Simon Van Alphen says, would Pikmin be a good fit for a LoMa-style game on a console? Like a new multiplayer mode and a sequel or a download spin-off? Could it work in split screen? Kind regards, Simon Van Alphen.
The answer is absolutely yes.
Yes, clearly.
I think it'd be cool to do. I mean, it'd be nice to see some sort of like hyper-competitive, non-shooter-based game emerge on the consoles. I think that could be really cool. I wish there was more stuff like that.
You listening, Nintendo? Pikmin.
They're not listening.
No, they're not. They're not.
To this podcast. The answer is definitively no. Yeah.
Satoru Iwata writes.
Reggie Fils-Aimé inquires.
All right, cool. I think that's it.
All right, guys. Talk to you later.
See ya.
Questions at allthumbs.net. Write us. Bye.
Use the internet.
Buy video games.
Video game.
God, I fucking wish I had bought Halo 4 and played it.
I will play Halo 4 with you. I'll do it.
Really?
If you get Halo 4, I'll get Halo 4.
Then we can...
Does the game have a co-op campaign?
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
We'll play over Xbox Live, though.
That's fine.
I don't want to play on the same TV.
No. We have 2 Xboxes, though, so we should co-op Halo 4.
Oh, man.
Tickles me, Chris. It 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 tickles me, Chris.